Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game and can declare itself mercifully hangover-free. I'm Kevin Day and he's Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. I say that, Kieran, this show's going out Thursday morning. I may not be hangover-free. I'm hangover-free now because we're recording it on Wednesday evening. Right. But a couple of friends of Ali's have just turned up and by the look of them, they're not here to read books. So there might be a lot of hangover in the morning. It's news day today, Kieran, and there's a lot of news to get through. So let's get through this first story and see if I can do it without a terrible pun. The Czech businessman, Daniel Kretinsky, has completed his purchase of a 27% stake in West Ham. That check won't be bouncing, will it?
Hey!
Hey? And that's without a hangover.
Yes, so Mr. Kretinsky has bought a minority stake in West Ham. If people are wondering, why has he only bought 27%? It's because under the arrangement that David Gold and David Sullivan have with the Greater London Authority, if they sell more than 30% of the club to anybody else, they then have to pay some of the profits back to the GLA on a sliding scale. Right. So if West Ham fans are wondering, is this as far as it's going to go? Well, that particular deal expires in 2023. So we've still got a couple of years to go. Now, it values the club at around about £600 million, which is considerably higher than the other party who was knocking around a few months ago called PAI Capital. I think they valued it at around about 400. So interesting times. I mean, West Ham are increasing the capacity of the stadium. It's going up to 62,000. I think they're hoping to get it to 67. So he's buying an asset which is getting bigger and bigger. It's in London, which is appealing to investors and it's appealing to tourists as well. Not that West Ham have much of a tourist fan base, but I suspect he's looking at that as an opportunity. Where this leaves David Gold and David Sullivan is a bit uncertain. I think David Gold's share now drops to around about 10-15% on the back of this. I think perhaps he's trying to look for an exit route potentially from the club. David Sullivan, it's less certain because I know some of his children are involved with the football club and they are West Ham mad. So whether he wants to hand over a legacy to them is a bit uncertain.
So these shares, he hasn't bought 27% of one owner's shares, has he? Presumably this is three of them have sold some of their shares to him. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's if a new investor comes in, there's two ways of buying into the club. First of all, the club can issue some shares to the investor. And the advantage of that is that the club gets the money and then the club can invest that in whatever it sees fit. It could use it to pay down debt. It could use it to invest in the squad. It could use it to invest in the training facilities and so on. Or alternatively, you can buy the shares from some of the existing shareholders. And there's normally something for a private company such as West Ham called preemption rights, where if somebody is thinking of buying, the other shareholders have first dibs, which I think is the legal phrase in terms of they have first refusal to acquire the shares, or they normally tend to agree amongst themselves that they'll let this new person in. My understanding, as far as West Ham is concerned, there's a bit of both. So the club's got a bit of extra money, and the existing owners have realised part of their investment as well.
See, I can't remember, because I probably never knew, how much Gold and Sullivan bought West Ham for in the first place, but I'm guessing there's a considerable profit being made by both of them here.
Yes, I mean, they bought the club at a time when it was very distressed. It had an Icelandic bank as an owner who was in deep financial problems as a result of the 2007-8 economic crash, which impacted upon many banks. So they bought it at a relatively minor price. They have put money into the club. That has to be that has to be communicated. And they've also charged interest on those loans. They will say, given the risk involved at West Ham, the interest rates they charged were bargain basement rates as far as they're concerned. And David Sullivan's often said he could have earned more money with his he could have earned more interest on his money by putting it elsewhere. So that's their justification. It has upset some West Ham fans, but they ultimately. Is West Ham a business or is it a football club? We look at football clubs through different lens depending upon where you are in terms of the relationship.
Now, this next story, Kieran, is very germane to a subject we've been talking about a lot, and it fully illustrates the difference between the image that betting companies want to project as responsible grown-up adults when the fun stop, and what they actually are. And pressure is growing on the EFL to ditch their sponsorship deal with Sky Bet after the company mistakenly emailed recovering addicts gambling promotions.
Yes. Sky Bet have come out and said it was a systems error investigation. We offer a full apology with regards to this. What happened is that one of Sky Bet's many tentacles is called Sky Vegas. And now how somebody, if you're a recovering addict, you should either be on a very sensitive email list, i.e. don't ever contact this person again, or you just deleted their email address. Sky Vegas offered them free spins on the roulette wheels and the online fruit machines, and those are very much geared, just like all fruit machines are, as anybody's ever experienced these things, to they give you dopamine hits and they are very addictive. And from the perspective of the gambling company, the great thing about them is that they've got guaranteed returns, whereas the bookies can lose money on the football. They can lose money on the horses from what they consider to be problem gamblers, which are, of course, the professional gamblers. We had Anthony on the show a few weeks ago. He can't place a bet in any online bookie in the UK under his own name because they'll say thanks but no thanks. We're not actually the same people we like to portray ourselves on the adverts, where there's lots of people with big smiling faces. We just want your money. So it puts the EFL in a really sticky position. The deal that they have with Sky Bet is worth around about £40 million a year. They'll come out and say, well, we've done our research and we don't think there is an issue with problem gambling. That can look pretty crass at times. I've seen widows of people who have lost their lives as a result of these free spin mechanizations, and it is it just makes you feel uncomfortable. And Sky Bet are now owned by a company called Flutter, and this used to be Paddy Power, and Paddy Power then they merged with Betfair. And it's indicative, I think, of the industry is that they're constantly changing their names of their holding companies. So Ladbrokes is now called something like Entain, and you go, well, why is that? Well, it's for the same reason that we now have Sellafield, and if something is a bit tainted, you go around changing the name. You don't see Apple ever suggesting it's going to change its name. The industry does have practices which are they're aimed at maximizing a return, and the idea of them really caring about these people, that they don't want to see anybody suffer. Let's be honest, we both know people that work there. That's not their intention, but it's collateral damage.
Yeah, I don't like the bloke on the Sky Vegas ad. Never met him. Possibly a very nice chap, but something about him really annoys me. It's just illogical. He just looks like a Scandinavian wrong'un for some reason. I don't know why. It's the moustache. It doesn't suit him. He's too pleased with himself. Do you know what? I'm probably better when I'm hungover. My mind's too clear. My mind's too clear, Kieran. The government's fan-led review of football is expected to be completed next week, but it seems that the Premier League and the EFL are no closer to agreeing on the ways that money should be redistributed.
Yes, I mean, we've had contact with Tracy Crouch, of whom we both have a very high opinion. She's independently minded, and I think her view is the government ideologically does not want to interfere with the industry, and it would rather that the Premier League and the EFL resolve their differences around the table, come up with a distribution method which is tolerable to both parties. Nobody's ever going to be completely happy, and therefore it will allow things to go forwards. But if this report in one of the papers, I think it was in the Mail, I know people might ideologically not be necessarily aligning with the Mail, but their sports journalists tend to normally have pretty good sources, in my view. So I think we always just try to separate that as well. The position is that the EFL want 25% of a pooled TV deal. They will say that was part of Project Big Picture. My view, having read Project Big Picture, was that it was 25% of what was left over after the Premier League clubs were allowed to sell 8 of their home games directly to the consumers overseas. So it's 25% of under Big Picture, it was 25% of a much, much smaller pie. If they can get this, then that would be fine. But the Glazers and John Henry are no friends of Morecambe and Accrington Stanley, so I can't see them giving a hoot. And looking at some of the comments that John Henry has made historically, where he's already grumbling about having to, in his words, subsidise other football clubs, I think there is going to be a bit of an en passe.
Mm. Speaking of pie, nice accent, by the way, there. What was the guest pie at Brighton on Saturday?
Do you know, I didn't have one this week because it was a 5:30 kickoff and we were going out for a meal afterwards. So I was under strict instructions from the Baroness. I'd already upset her because I suggested that we go to see Bootleg Blondie, which is a fan. I like my tribute bands, and she said no. I know what you like when you start thinking about Debbie Harry. I didn't have a pie. Well, I'll find out because we've got another 5:30 kickoff coming up soon.
I can but admire your devotion to the Baroness, Kieran, because I think most people listening to this would have happily gone and said, no, of course I won't have a pie, and then just not told them. But actually, the Baroness would know if you'd had pie. You've got guilt written all over you, haven't you? Which,
unlike my Uncle Terry.
Considering the life you've lived, your poker face is terrible. Premier League clubs may have to get all new sponsorship deals approved by the Premier League before they can be announced. And I'm going to say to you, Kieran, what I've said about just about every story in the last 3 weeks. Is this to do with Newcastle and the takeover?
Well, the Premier League will say it's got nothing to do with Newcastle, but that's bollocks. This is all driven by a fear that Newcastle will sign commercial and sponsorship deals with entities in the Middle East at non-market values. Now, so under the present rules, if you go into the Premier League handbook, it says that if a football club signs a deal with what's referred to as a related party, so it's either the owners or another company owned by the owners, or one of the owners' family, and so on, then that has to be subject to scrutiny. And what that will happen is they'll get a bunch of management consultants along, and they'll be charging them £1,000 an hour, and they'll say, well, in our opinion, it's worth X, and if it's signed for more than X, you'd only be allowed to use X as part of your financial fair play calculations. Now, for example, we have mentioned this on many occasions. Everton's owner's former business partner, who does not own any shares in Everton Football Club and is therefore not a related party, he sponsored or rather he signed a deal for £35 million about for the naming rights of a stadium which didn't exist.
Yeah.
And we said at the time, hats off. They've found a way to circumvent the rules, and all's tickety boo. What the Premier League are now proposing, or what I think it looks like Premier League owners are now proposing, is that every single sponsorship deal has to go before the beak to get approval, and if they think it's a bit high, then they'll get these management consultants along, brand valuation experts or whatever they choose to call themselves, and they will say, well, in our opinion, it's worth so much, and therefore we think it's overvalued.
Isn't this now legendary Premier League meeting a couple of weeks ago, which broke up in acrimony? It wasn't that partly because Newcastle threatened to do just that. That they announced that was their intention. So, with hindsight, that would seem to be a strange move if the Premier League because this will just go through with 14 votes, won't it?
Yes, I mean at the Premier League meeting recently, I think it was 18 to put up a temporary ban on related party transactions. Manchester City. I think they abstained because they saw the direction of travel, right. And they think that some of the other clubs are. There's a history between Manchester City because we know that quite a few of the clubs in the Premier League were putting pressure on UEFA and apparently also the Premier League. And I keep being told that the Premier League's investigation into Manchester City's sponsorship deals has not yet concluded, although it seems to be very quiet at present on that particular story. So there's clearly a bad feeling. I don't think Newcastle would have been as crass as to say we're going to sign a load of sponsorship deals. Right. I think it was just this is the anticipation. There are, however, many other ways to circumvent financial fair play rules. So all that will happen is our silver-tongued friends in the legal and accounting professions, they will just be working a bit more overtime and coming up with more schemes which are within the rules, and that's what creative accounting is all about.
Now, Kieran, if any people have spent more time hungover than me recently, it's probably Derby County fans. And this isn't going to help because the hearing date for their appeal against a 12-point deduction for going into administration has been adjourned.
Yes, this was, I think this was put out in one of the papers. It was confirmed by the EFL. Now, in the last hour, so since we wrote the original script, I've seen, I think John Percy of The Telegraph, he has tweeted that the administrators are now going to accept a further 9-point penalty on top of the 12 points. Now, the EFL, of course, has said, well, we've said nothing about this. The administrators have said, we've said nothing about this. But he's a journalist. He will have his sources on one side of the equation or the other. So we don't know exactly what's going on. My understanding from doing a bit of ferreting and talking to, we've got friends who are journalists as well, was that originally what the administrators and the EFL wanted to do is to effectively to bundle together all of the points deductions, because it's absolutely critical. If you want to buy a football club, the first thing you want to know is A, what am I getting, and B, how much money is the club going to be generating? Now, on a 12-point penalty, Derby County have got a chance of avoiding relegation. 21-point, I think we can say, it drops to pretty close to zero, and therefore that would impact upon what a prospective owner is willing to pay. Would you be happy paying £60 million plus for a club in League One? Probably not, especially given that, remember, Derby County don't own their stadium, and we don't know what the position of Mel Morris is. He's the person whose financial mismanagement has ultimately caused the club to go into administration. Of course, he will say that that's not the case, and it's all to do with the EFL and COVID. But other people have other opinions. So that's where we are. Yeah, you've got to feel so much for Derby fans, because Wayne Rooney has done a very sterling job under very trying circumstances. Without giving too much away, we've been contacted by people from Derby because they're not getting much communication. And I used to work in the insolvency industry, so I'm saying, well, when I used to do it, these were your rights. This is what you're entitled to do, and so on. And I think there has been a disappointment with in terms of communication. People are, more importantly than points deductions, people are worrying about whether they've got jobs, whether they can pay the mortgage this month, whether they can afford to pay the groceries in a couple of months, and so on. And it is absolutely essential, I think, in running a good administration, is that you treat people with dignity and you keep them as informed as you can do. And it's not pleasant, especially if you know that there is bad news coming out. The reason why I got out of it, because I was just shit at it. If I knew there was going to be bad news coming up, I wouldn't be able to sleep. And I think you have to be very very certain and very, very abrupt at sometimes, but in terms of the way that you compartmentalize your own life. But at the same time, keep people in the loop as much as you can. They do appreciate it. The staff aren't there to be awkward. The staff don't particularly care who pays them in 3 months' time, so long as it's somebody. And the more knowledge that they have is the better for their own peace of mind.
Yeah. Had I known you were going to break that news, Kieran, I would have given that story a much less light-hearted introduction than I did.
Right.
My
Sorry,
apologies.
It came through just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, well, yes. The irony is, I've been working on a topical news quiz all day, so anybody should know about breaking news is me. Apologies to any Derby fans listening. It's totally unintentional. Of course, our heart, as Kieran says, goes out to all of you worried about your futures at the club. Still in the Championship, Kieran, you've been looking at the numbers and found that clubs in that basket case of a division have lost. I can't bring myself to read this number out because I think Guy may have made a mistake, but it's a huge, huge figure since 2013.
Yes, it is £3.25 billion.
Holy Mary,
yeah, and the trouble is, we now just sort we start shouting out these numbers as if they are something which we can relate to, but we can't. The producer Guy's closer to that number than you or I, as we're aware, but it's a ridiculous amount of money. And when I did the analysis, you know what I'm like, because I'm so OCD. If somebody asks me a question, I have to try to find out the answer if it involves numbers, because otherwise I just get really twitchy. So I went in and I dug out all of the figures for the past 6 or 7 years, and the concern is not just that the clubs are losing money, but it's that the losses increased every single year in the Championship, and it sort of links back to what we were talking about earlier. I'm not going to. There's no reason why the EFL should ditch that sponsorship deal with Sky Bet if there is no legislation coming through, and if gambling adverts are going to be allowed on television and other media forms. Why should the football industry take a particular moral and ethical perspective if the rest of the world isn't? Now, individual clubs have said we're not happy about it, and I fully understand that. And also, the EFL will be in breach of contract. So, I'm no fan of the gambling industry, but when you see the clubs losing these amounts of money, you can understand why Rick Barry and Trevor Birch will say, well, they're paying us more than anybody else, and just look at the losses.
There have been some strange goings on at a company called Cantervale Holdings Limited.
Yes, this sounds a bit Agatha Christie, doesn't it?
It does.
This is a company which was set up a couple of years ago, and at the time it had £1 worth of shares, and that one share was owned by somebody called Amanda Staveley. And then what we've seen in the past week or two is it issued £38 million worth of shares, and people going, well, what's that for? Because we thought the deal was 305 million. And then it issued a further £306 million worth of shares, which looks like that's the money which is going to be used to pay off Mike Ashley. So the smart money in terms of what are they doing with the other 38 million, that would appear to be indicative of the club has other costs, has other commitments, it's losing money, and therefore it's effectively a plug from the shareholders to allow the club to meet its other financial obligations for the next few months. So where Cantervale Holdings is going to go long term, we're not sure. It's clearly Newcastle is owned 80% by the PIF, 10% by the mysterious and very quiet Reuben brothers, and 10% by the sort of the front of house Amanda Staveley. And lots of people keep asking me, how much money do Newcastle have to spend? And to be honest, it's an open-ended question. You can fully understand it. If Amanda Staveley and the Reuben brothers have always got to put up 20% of what Newcastle have got to spend, then that is going to act as an anchor. Is the PIF going to increase its stake on a longer-term basis? We don't know. Or is it going to provide Newcastle United with funds through a non-share issue? That could be another alternative, which leads us back to, again, one of our other questions we've had, or other topics we've looked at today with regards to sponsorship. So strange goings on.
And does the founding of Cantervale Holdings predate interest in Newcastle United from the Saudis, or was it roughly the same time?
Well, no. If you think about it, Mike Ashley has been having discussions with Amanda Staveley on and off for a long period of time. Clearly, she must have had some form of encouragement. Not that it only costs buttons to set up a company, but that was created. It was effectively a dormant company, and then it's exploded over the course of the last week or two.
Okay, well, on a similar note, I suppose, a motion has been submitted to the upcoming Bayern Munich AGM to force the club to commit to ending its sponsorship deal with Qatar Airways.
Yes, we're big fans of German football fan culture, and I think the contrast with the culture in this country. I'm not saying one's better than another, but they are certainly different. So Bayern Munich has had a relationship with Qatar Airways since 2016. There have been grumblings from fans throughout, and at the most recent match that Bayern played, they had a picture of, I think it's Uli Hoeneß, the chief exec or the chairman, with a banner saying "We'll wash anything for money."
Wow!
With clearly directing that towards Qatar Airways, and because the shareholdings in German football are much broader than they are in most clubs as far as the UK is concerned. It looks like some fan groups have now put together this motion with a suggestion that Bayern relinquish the relationship they have with Qatar Airways purely because of the human rights records that have arisen over the course of recent years. And how that's going to play out, we'll have to wait and see, because if you take a look at Bayern's biggest shareholders, they're companies such as Audi, Volkswagen, and Bayer, and so on. And therefore, they might be sensitive. We are living in a cultural time where corporate social responsibility is something which companies are very, very concerned about. So it'll be intriguing to see how this one goes. Does the money help? According to Bayern's executives, it helps them compete with the other European giants, and therefore it's a useful source of income. As far as the fans are concerned, Bayern have also got relationships with other sponsors, so why one less isn't going to make a huge amount of difference.
It's interesting, Kieran. I did an interview just a couple of weeks ago for German TV with a very nice journalist talking about fan culture. It was based around the Newcastle takeover. and she didn't know that much about football, but she was saying that she understood that certainly during the 90s and 2000s, German football clubs and football fans were very envious of English fan culture and copied it to a certain extent, and that's, I find, turned on its head now, and increasingly English football fans are envious of German fan culture, aren't they?
Yeah, yes, they are. But I think to me, Germany and England are the two. I think Germany's the closest country to England in many respects. And if we go back 6 months, it was English football fans who prevented the European Super League being created. It was that coming together, and that was something to be very proud of. And I think for a motion like that, the fans are brilliant. When it falls into self-interest, then sort of tribalism sometimes takes over.
Yeah. Very good news, it seems like, for women's football, in that CBS Sports has secured a deal to broadcast the FA Women's Super League in 22-23 and 23-24.
Yes, so you're always fighting for airspace for any product when it comes to sport, and this is, as you said, it's a 2-year deal. CBS already have the NWSL, the American equivalent of the Women's Super League, as part of their roster, and it is noticeable that women's football has probably a relatively higher profile compared to men's football in the US than it does over here, because the Women's Super League is still in a growth phase. But it's great that a product which does look good. I shouldn't be calling it a product. Yeah, that makes me sound like that makes me sound like one of them. And we are fans. But women's football is fantastic to watch, and it's now starting to develop a TV audience, and that's why more and more sponsors and broadcasters are getting involved.
Do we know how much the deal will be worth?
No, that's the one thing that hasn't been communicated. They tend to be a bit coy on these because I suspect part of the reason for that is that the Premier League is due to announce its renewal of TV rights in the US, and there has been talk of some that going up by 50% potentially. So I think it's perhaps better that the two things aren't shown, because people will make comparisons, and that they're different. It's just, and therefore I don't think comparisons are necessarily appropriate.
But CBS, Kieran, are major players, so the fact that they're committing to a 2-year deal indicates that they have some confidence that the women's football in this country is going to continue growing at quite some pace, don't they?
Yes, yeah, because they wouldn't have signed it unless they feel that they can deliver that as part of a package. We've seen some of the players from the American game coming across here to the UK, increasing, and therefore what the people at CBS will think. Well, if some of our star players are playing in the UK, we will have people that will be willing to watch them. So they are a large organisation, as of course we know, and it's part of the growth of the women's game, which has got to be encouraged.
This is a story that I think, Kieran, you predicted a couple of weeks ago. The San Francisco 49ers have increased their stake in Leeds United to 44%. And it comes back to our very first story, Kieran, that sometimes fans don't always understand why owners increase a stake in clubs incrementally rather than buying it outright or getting a majority share as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I think as far as the 49ers are concerned, is that they are still learning about the game. What they now have, and remember, we had Parag from the 49ers on the show some time ago.
Nice chap.
Yeah, very, very keen with, very much from a marketing and commercial background. And that's the one area of growth which I think Leeds can really tap into. 49ers are an organisation which does have a focus on the bottom line. They would have only increased their investment in Leeds United if they felt that it would be financially benefit them on a, presumably on a long-term basis. So I think it's a vote of confidence in the club. Radrizzani, the Leeds majority share owner, he's not given any indication that he is planning to sell the club to the 49ers at a later date, but certainly they are in a very strong position should he choose to do so. Leeds have spoken about expanding Elland Road to 50, 55, 60,000 capacity. That is going to cost money. I don't think Radrizzani has those resources himself, whereas the 49ers are more likely to be able to tap into American markets for that. So you can see the logic of what they've done. And they feel that Leeds as a club, and we all know where Leeds are in the pecking order, is perhaps not generating enough commercial income given the size of the club and given the potential of the club.
This, Kieran, is a rookie question, but when an owner has as much as 44% of the club, but not a full majority, how much influence does that actually bring for them?
Well, ultimately, the decisions at a club are made at board level, and it is the respective owners who have the ability to appoint directors. Now, normally, if you go through a particular threshold, that will give you, quite often you will insist, I therefore can appoint 2 directors to the board, and therefore I will have, my voice will be heard.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that your voice will always, your arguments will always be followed, but it gets you a seat at the table. And if you've got progressive ideas, and I think the 49ers do, then I would imagine that Radrizzani, although he's got a majority shareholding, it's in his interests to take heed of some of those ideas, because if it increases the value of the club and he does decide to sell, he'll be able to extract more money from a sale.
Yeah. 2 stories, Kieran, to go. And the first is that the Premier League has rejected a proposal for clubs to wear their away kits on Boxing Day to support a homeless charity. Why have they done that?
This is in respect of Shelter, who are an absolutely fantastic organisation.
Indeed.
They approached the Premier League, and what they want to highlight is that there are a lot of people who don't have a home, and effectively, I think the tagline of the campaign was away from home, and get clubs to do this. Now, to be fair to the Premier League, I did have a word with them and say, what's the position here? And their response was effectively, we get an awful lot of applications from charities. We try to allocate those which get approval at board level, but we can't just take on one and give it priority over others. Having said that, I think there were some individual clubs, and I think my club Brighton here were included, who said, "Yeah, we quite like that idea."
Yeah.
And I was sent the rules for the wearing of kits, and it does appear that you're supposed to wear your home kit at a match. Could the Premier League take a slightly more relaxed view if one of or a few of the clubs, and it's down to individual decisions, if a few of the clubs decide to support this, I'm sure that they would do so. So we'll have to wait and see. So it's not going to be for all 10 games on Boxing Day, and it will be possibly none, ideally a few.
Well, there won't be 10 games on Boxing Day. That's the trouble, will there?
Right,
There'll be 3 games on Boxing Day and then 2 at midnight the night after. And we started with a good news story, Kieran, which is that I didn't have a hangover. And I'm not enjoying this clarity at all. It's just strange. I've not even put my glasses on. I can actually read the script. The script. That makes it sound very professional, doesn't it? I can actually read the things that Guy has bashed out on the typewriter. Literally, it's down to San Francisco 49ers leads 44%, and I extrapolate from that what's gone on. But this is a good news story, and it's from a club, Kieran, that has been on the good step for quite some time. So we're not surprised that they've done this, and the opponent's response to it has been fantastic. Lincoln City are going to give their share of the profits from their FA Cup tie at the weekend to their opponents, Bowers and Pitsea FC. And Lincoln City, I saw the response of the Bowers and Pitsea manager to the way Lincoln treated the club in general on the whole day, and how it made their players will always, he said, will remember it for the rest of their life. And as my granddad always says, it's nice to be nice. It doesn't take much of an effort to treat people correctly, which Lincoln City clearly did. And the bonus is that they're giving them some extra money, which for a club like Bowers and Pitsea from the Isthmian League is fantastic.
Yes, yeah, and you've got to give credit here first of all to the board at Lincoln, and I've got to know Clive and Liam a little bit myself. They are the type of owners that make you proud to be football fans, in the sense that they see the club as being that lightning rod for all that is good, as being a part of the community. And the attendance at the match on Saturday was 5,800. So that was pretty good in itself. The way that I think I've got this right. It's normally that after deducting the running costs, both clubs get 45% of the profits, and I think 10% goes to the FA, which is then used to cover admin and so on. So for Lincoln to sacrifice their share is a very noble thing to do. But also, as you rightly said, the Bowers and Pitsea managers said, we were just made so welcome. We chatted. We weren't sort of treated as you're a few divisions below us. Thanks for coming up. Good luck, and off you go. And at a time when various parts of society today and various people in positions of power continue to embarrass us, to have good people in football. And it's not just Lincoln. We both love Andy Holt at Accrington. The Palios is at Tranmere, and many other clubs as well. This is a good news story, and it's something that we should celebrate.
You see, I'm lucky, Kieran, because I was working on Have I Got News For You yesterday, so I got to spend the day writing jokes about Sleaze and Boris Johnson, which I can tell you is very cathartic, especially the jokes that have got no chance of ever being broadcast. You still write them anyway. But also, and I'm sure what made me smile about this story, and I'm sure inadvertently one or two COVID regulations were probably breached, but I just love the fact that Bowers and Pitsea, like Michael Appleton, took some of the players into the bar with the Bowers and Pitsea players, just chatted for half an hour, and it would have made those. They played very well. Apparently, they only lost 1-0, but they would have walked out there feeling 7 foot tall. And like I say, it doesn't take much for the club to do that, and those simple gestures are remembered, and also it makes Lincoln City fans feel better about themselves, and so they should. And we've discovered, Kieran, let's face it, over the past 18 months that more clubs behave like that than don't. So again, we've got far more, seeing Marcus Rashford get his award this week, we've got far more reasons to be proud of football than to be ashamed of it, whatever the tabloid press might continue to try and tell us. Now, if you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod, a lot of which I have to say recently has gone on paracetamol, then you go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, on our Monday pod, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire, who's knackered because he's been tidying the house all day because the Baroness has been away, for his custom. I hope Finlay did his bit. Did Finlay tidy his own away?
It's very good because he'll just find if there's any sun in any of the windows in the house, that's it. He will find a way of finding it, and it will just lie down and absorb it all.
And also, that's a good way of finding out where the dust is as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well done, Finlay.
Yes. Well. Yeah. If you want to support us through Patreon or whatever it is, that's fantastic. If you want to give us some good karma. Voting is open in the 2021 FSA Awards. So if you go to the fsa.org.uk, and vote for us in the best online presents category, that'd be absolutely cool. Well, we don't know what best online presents means, but hey, a gong's a gong, and I've not won anything since getting my half colours for my cricket for my school cricket team in 1979.
Your half colours?
My half colours.
What does that mean?
I'm not good enough to get my colours.
When did you go to some kind of high fancy falutin public school?
No, I didn't. I went to I was at school in Brighton. I was but we had.
You're getting colours. You just turn up in your tracksuit and play cricket. Not even white at my school.
No. We had a proper cricket wicket. We had fantastic sports facility. In fact, Brighton used to go and train on our football pitch, which was this was in the late 70s. It was absolutely fantastic. Peter Ward, Mark Lawrenson, Nobby Orton. And co. Some of your favourites.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. Somebody sent me a Peter Ward T-shirt to send to you. I've slammed it in a drawer. I can't remember which drawer I slammed it in, but it's a lovely T-shirt by the look of it.
Right.
Yes, somebody sent me a beautiful Fresh Prince of Hilaire T-shirt.
Excellent.
And a Peter Ward shirt, which I keep forgetting to give to you. I was going to say something really fun. Oh, yes, we've been nominated for the Best Online Presence. So basically, we've been nominated for being online.
Yes.
Essentially. That's the kind of least you'd expect from a podcast that is online.
Yeah. We're not good enough to be put in for the best podcast.
No, we're nowhere near that. But being on that really is. Put their picture up on the fridge. They haven't won anything, but put it up on the fridge as a consolation prize. We've been actually, I've not. You've been invited, so that's not a good sign that we've won. We haven't even invited both of us.
But you're up for another award.
Yes. Well, 5-year plan are up for. Yes. Screw you. We're up for best podcast.
Yeah.
Also, but we're not nominated for Best Online. The categories, I mean, we love the Football Supporters Association and we're very, very proud and privileged to be nominated, but
absolutely,
the categories are a little bit baffling, I have to say. But as you say, we'll turn up and we'll find out where our table is and we'll make the decision very early on that we haven't won. Because it's a short. Table 73. Yes, here you go.
Yes,
that'll be us. But the beauty is that I get all your free wine, so that's handy.
Yes, excellent.
You can have my water, Kieran. I'm very generous like that.
Excellent.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.